Especially in the documentary world, I just want to see more of what I want to talk about. And I don't really see it out there. Maybe my algorithm is on a different rhythm. Who knows? Hi, I'm Taylor-Alexis, and this is a safe place to talk dangerously about life lessons in your 30s, wellness, and filmmaking. So if you're new, welcome, and if not, thanks for coming on back. So today we are going to get into, finally, some filmmaking stuff. I know there's so many topics to talk about, and especially in the documentary world, I just want to see more of what I want to talk about. And I don't really see it out there. Maybe my algorithm is on a different rhythm. Who knows? But that's why I'm here. So today we are going to talk about the 3 stages in filmmaking. Now, there are 5 stages, right? There's development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. But I figured that's just too much to get into in one video. So let's just start with the 3 in the middle. So let's get into it. I just want to introduce myself. I am a documentary filmmaker. I used to also do weddings. Shooting weddings has really helped me with my documentary skills as well. Like, I feel like with weddings, it's just so fast paced. It's like, you only have one day. You only got one shot to get her done. Whereas sometimes in documentary, maybe you can like retake a shot. Maybe you can schedule another interview, etc., etc. That is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video today. Just talking about the things about production that you don't really like hear about until maybe you go through it yourself. So I'm trying to save you some extra steps because woo. The first stage, pre-production. This is the before. This is that crucial time where you are honing in on the planning, because what you do in the beginning will affect how things will end. And this is the stage where you can save. You should be thinking about funding and allocating money towards post-production in this stage. So before we even get into picking up a camera or thinking about budgets or scheduling and logistics, we need to talk about the story. We need to develop it. What's the narrative, right? What are you trying to say in the story? Are you the right person to tell the story? And I wouldn't even want you to get so deep into that, because I know we're living in some really sensitive times where, people I feel like the woke culture has really done a number. But is it time for this? Relevancy matters. I think in the early days of the pandemic, there were so many documentaries that came up because we were at home and people needed content and things like that. And I remember seeing a bunch of celebrity documentaries and I'm just like, you just got here. Your story's still being built. This is just my personal thing. I really don't want to see the story of someone that's like 5 years into the entertainment world. I don't. I want to see the person that's done like 20, 30 years of work and see like how they've evolved. I'm not saying that their story isn't important. This is just my preference. So I'm going back to, is it time for this, right? Then you can also think about the access that you have. So some of the best stories come from just having access to people. I always think back to the first documentary, and one of the participants in my film was someone that I was actually in school with. So it was like, oh, the access is right there. You know what I mean? With researching and developing the story and the narrative, there really is an emphasis on research. Like, look at previous documentaries that are related to your document or are similar on the document. Let's look into archival footage. Let's look into what kind of interviews are out there, what kind of observational footage is out there on that topic. And then also, I know it's not really popular and it doesn't seem, fun, but we have to think about ethics. We really do. We really have to think about ethics when it comes to filmmaking because, there's a thin line. So then the next part of pre-production would be budgeting and planning. So I know I said, think about the money, and I absolutely still feel that way. Think about the money before you even pick up the camera, before you think about audio, before you think about lighting, location scouting, any of that. Let's think about budgeting. And I know it's hard because as creatives, we're not really thinking about the business. And that ends today. No. But we need to think about that stuff. So like in this stage of pre-production, we should start planning or brainstorming for sponsors. Who can we reach out to and see if they'd be willing to donate, or to offer some funds towards our film, that have to do with it. So let's say you're doing a film on guitars, right? Just because one's in the corner. I think it'd be smarter to reach out to Sam Ash. Wow, that's a throwback. Versus reaching out to Samsung. Unless, I don't know if Samsung has like electronic guitar or something like that. But, you want to look for sponsors or think about sponsors that make sense. And then the other part too of thinking about the funds before we even start filming is just being open to applying to grants. I know they take a lot of work, a lot of writing, but it's worth it sometimes to get that extra funding. Filmmaking is not cheap. Otherwise, there'd be a lot more people doing it for a lot longer, or at least independent filmmaking. So start thinking about allocating money for film festivals. Those film festival fees add up, $20 here, $50 there, 100 something here, and, maybe keeping track of the deadlines. So that way you can use that when you're scheduling in the next part of pre-production. Ooh, I love when you get a nice little segue. With, doing interviews and scheduling shoots and stuff like that, you definitely want to create a schedule that has buffer time. Because sometimes you just never know. You might get stuck in traffic. You might need to charge some devices again, depending on like how much gear you have. You might have like some kind of setback, and you got to plan for the setback. And this is all part of the pre-production stage. I'm telling you, when you have a solid foundation, it's going to be hard to shake you. And that's in life. So in that time, you're setting up meetings to speak with the people that you're going to either work with, the people that you're going to shoot, just to kind of get everybody on the same page, get a range of like who's available on what days, what kind of gear is there, what are we going to use. Like, this is when you do all of that pre-planning. I can't stress it enough. It just makes things easier. When I was doing weddings, I would go look at the place. First thing I'm looking at is, one, how far is it from me, right? Because I was taking an Uber. 2, the lighting. How much natural light do we have? What do I need to bring? What's the setup? How is the ceremony gonna look? Where is everybody coming out for, the wedding party? Who's doing what for the first dance? Things like that. So I'm just kind of pre-planning what's happening. That way, when I get there on the day, it's go time, Last thing, I cannot stress this enough with a pre-production stage, release forms. Get release forms. There are so many online that you can maybe do like a template. You could even have it on your phone, and that way you can have like electronic signatures or something, or you can go old school, print out a sheet that basically tells them that, they're relinquishing rights to whatever you're filming, because it's so easy to forget that part. And then let's say your film gets picked up by PBS, and PBS is going to be like, hey, so do you have release forms or personal release forms for these people that were in your film? And you say no, you're going to have to either go back and get it, and that's going to be a lot of work, or they're just not going to move forward with your film. So release forms. I know it takes the fun out of it. It makes it so like, we're speaking legalese, but get that release form. Okay, so now we're off to production. This is where the fun happens, and this is usually the shortest part of the process. It's really the shortest part of the process. So let's first talk about the equipment essentials. So in the pre-production stage, hopefully, with the planning and coming up with the meetings and things like that, and what kind of gear you're going to use, you might have like a shot list or an idea of what you're going to film. So with using your shot list, you definitely want to kind of associate what gear you're going to use, right? So if I know that I'm going to be doing like an establishing shot of the location for the film, let's say if my grandmother's documentary, I know I'm in St. Kitts, I want to get a really nice shot of like the coast with, the tide coming in and like some mountains here. And I know that I'm going to bring my widest lens, because that's going to make sure that I can get everything in the lens to kind of establish where we are. But if I'm doing like an interview, I'm like, I know that I'm probably going to need, a 2-camera setup, bare minimum, right? The 2-camera setup, one facing on and the other side profile. I know I want the profile to be a tight shot, so I'm probably going to go with, an 85 millimeter lens, or maybe, depending on the lighting in there, maybe the 104. And then maybe the head on would be either like anywhere from 35 to 50 millimeters. Deciding that in the pre-production stage really helps when you get into the spot and you're trying to film it, trying to set up. You already know what you're going to do. You already know what you're going to grab. As far as audio goes, and that decision is based upon what's going on. Sometimes it calls for a Rode mic that you're, clipped up here and mic'd there. Maybe you might need a boom mic, and that I would say, make sure that you hire a sound person, because as the person filming, you're not going to have the time to be doing both. You're already thinking about a lot. So boom mics are great for if you're moving around and doing things like that, but make sure that you get a sound person. And that is where you think about, from production, with the money. I say always hire the sound person. You'll never regret it. If they know what they're doing, you'll never regret it. And this isn't really like in the production stuff, but I think this is like just in general as a filmmaker. One of the best advice I ever received was to know your gear. Know it like the back of your hand, and then make it in a way sort of like formulaic to whatever type of thing that you're shooting. So if you're doing interviews, this is your settings. This is how you want to, you want to shoot it on 24 frames per second, and maybe the close-up one you want to shoot it at 60 so that you can catch, I don't know, like the tears dropping pretty slowly and slowing down in post. I'm getting ahead of myself, but making sure that your gear is so important. There's nothing worse than arriving to a set, whether it's yours or someone else's, and you're fumbling with your gear. Right? It's one, it's unprofessional, and it's like two, you're like wasting people's time. It's like you call yourself a videographer. But I find my best advice for knowing your gear and working with your gear on day of things is to just make it as light as possible. Unless you're a man. If you're a man, go for it. As a woman, I'm like, please, I got to make this as light and easy as possible, because I just don't want this cumbersome bag and look like there's just too much. So just make it easy for yourself. Okay, so the next part about the fun part is the interview techniques. Now, I enjoy doing interviews with people, and I think journalism is a respected art form, and I feel for my journalists now because it is just a different world. Hold on, I need to adjust this lighting because the sun is going down. So in order to honor our journalists that are out there, I will tell you, I'm not asking, I am telling you, do your research on people. Do that in the pre-production. Make sure that you know who you're sitting with, make sure you know some basic information, and that you have your questions ready. So that way the interview can come off a little bit more personal, more conversational, instead of like, oh, great, so where were you on July 17th of 1969? Like things like that. Like, you want to make sure that you're also listening to what's being said, that you can bounce back. It's an art form, and that takes practice and that takes skill. So I give it up to journalists. Schedule time to shoot B-roll. And what I mean by that is, like, one of the best advice I ever got from the new school was to just always shoot B-roll. Like, whenever you can, B-roll, B-roll, B-roll. Because you never know when you'll need to use it, and sometimes you can't go back to said location. So, there's B-roll before the shoot, there's B-roll during the shoot, and there's B-roll after the shoot. B-roll after the shoot I find that to be the most fun part too, because you're already like comfortable with the person's comfortable with being on camera. So maybe now, during the interview, you can listen for certain cues of like, oh, maybe this will be nice to get like a shot of them doing this or something similar. That way we can throw it in there and make the film itself more dynamic. Also room sound. Try your best. I think put that on your call sheet, at the top of the call sheet, like on your to-do list of like, hey, make sure to do 20 to 30 seconds of room sound. And what that does is helps in editing in the post-production stage, so that, let's say the person speaking has a moment of silence. Or if you heard my neighbor like dropping something on the floor, that room tone, it's called room tone. Wow. The room tone, you can put that over that part, or my neighbor dropping something on on my ceiling. That way it just sounds better. It flows. So always get room tone. 20 to 30 seconds. You can ask the room to be quiet. I'd say do it before you start the interview, get that out the way. And then be open to capturing happy accidents. Sometimes weird things will happen on set and you just have to roll with it. And I say keep the cameras rolling because you never know if you can use it or not. There's been so many moments where I was like, oh, okay. Like for instance, I was in Sync Kids, and hopefully I can find some of this on my hard drive. I haven't pulled out my hard drive since I moved, but when I was in St. Kitts, and I remember I did an interview with my grandmother, and she had said something about feeling held back even though she was in America, right? And we can get into that in the film itself, but so funny. I heard like a cow mooing, and I was like, So I pop my head outside and I look out the window, and then I see that this cow has like a collar and a chain around him, and then it's like the chain is dragging on the floor, and he's still like moving about life or whatever. And I was like, oh, this would be so nice to get because, here she is in America working on her citizenship, or she has her green card, but she still doesn't feel free, much like this cow with the chain on, but they're roaming around. You know what I mean? Anyways, whatever. Roll with me. So then the next part of production, which is also contributes to the fun part, is just working with a crew. It's like, I can't stress about being likable on set. That will get you places further than, your resume and things like that, because people want to be able to spend time with you on set. Or maybe let's say you have to do a few nights in another city or another state. Are you enjoyable enough to be like staying in someone's hotel room, sharing a room with someone, things like that. So that's not to say that, you shouldn't hone in on your actual technical skills, but that likable part too will get you further. And then I think, let's say you are the director and you hire a crew, making sure that everybody's on the same page is key, and it's going to really show you whether or not like you can be a leader or not. And it might take time, you might ease into it, but clear communication is key, and setting those expectations in that pre-production stage will help to have a smoother set on film days or shoot days. Okay, so now let's move on to post-production. This is where the work lies. This is the true definition of it gets real. I'm bring it back to weddings. So pre-production would be me doing consultations, meeting with the bride and the groom, getting to know them, learning about their wedding, going to see the location, things like that, connecting with their wedding planners, connecting with their DJs, all of that. That's the pre-production. Then the production itself is the day of the wedding. It's cool, 8 to 10, 12, maybe 13 hours. And then post-production is where we're taking all of that footage from the entire day and trying to make sense of it, trying to create a story. And that is where the work lies. And I will say this, post-production is probably one of the most expensive parts of filmmaking because, it depends on your skill level, right? So if you're not a strong editor, you might want to hire out for that. If you want a sound engineer, you might want to hire out for that as well. I highly recommend outsourcing. You can't do it all. Those who do. La que puede, puede. Let's just be real here. We don't want burnout. We don't want to, end up hating everything about filmmaking from doing it all by yourself, because that's the whole point of it. Like filmmaking, especially in documentary, is so collaborative. So with post-production, the first thing I want to kind of touch on is the editing workflow and techniques. First of all, invest in a few hard drives. A few hard drives, maybe even do like a backup cloud service, just so that you have your files, but try your best. As soon as you get home, if it's anything that you do, upload your files, and maybe we can do a video about how to organize your editing setup and your files, so that way, you know what's what and where's everything. But that brings me to logging and reviewing. So you get home, you upload your footage, do it to your, I wouldn't recommend your computer if you don't have the space, because that can slow you down. But upload it to your hard drive, upload it to another hard drive, put it up in the cloud somewhere, and be done with it. The next day you can go back and review and figure out what's what, what did you shoot? Did you like any of it? You can go back and listen to audio, things like that. I love using DaVinci Resolve by Blackmagic. Honestly, I've taught myself how to edit, and I've learned the major ones, except for Avid. Avid is a beast. I've dealt with Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, and I would say DaVinci is kind of like a mixture of the two, and then some more elevation. I love it. I think once you figure out what's what, it's really, really cool. And I really love the fact that you can do color grading and color correction on DaVinci. You can also do it on the others, but I'm saying they have a large focus on it too. But anyways, I'm not promoting them. But if you can, start with the free version and then go with the one for $300. I'm telling you, it's worth it. It's like, love it. So with editing techniques, I think what's really important is understanding pacing and rhythm within film. So before I get to like sound, because I have a rule about sound or some advice about sound, making sure to let certain scenes breathe, right? Let's say you have a heavy topic. I'll go to my Silent Willow. Quay was talking about her blood transfusion.
I couldn't leave the hospital until I got a blood transfusion, and I was just like, okay, cool, just give me the blood and I'm leaving. And my doctor told me, no, you're not going anywhere.
That's an intense topic, right? It could be traumatic for anyone, for you, for Quay, for all of us, right? So you don't want to just bam go into the next scene. No, you want to like ease into it and figure out like the pacing. But it also depends on your film. I'll always think about that McDonald's Monopoly documentary, and I remember watching it and I was like, I just love the pacing of it. It's so good because it matched the theme of how fast things were moving. It just has to make sense for whatever the topic is. So really, I gotta stress the importance of pacing and timing within editing. And then also ask yourself if you have the capacity to edit. As much as I like editing, I really do, getting started is really hard sometimes, and maybe I might need to outsource and hire an editor using the money that I allocated from pre-production to come in and maybe help with a rough cut, and then I can go in and tweak. I don't think there's anything wrong with outsourcing if you can. That's one of the things about getting a sponsor, right? You can use that money towards editing. I'll just let you in on a secret. Whatever money that you get from these sponsors, these companies and things like that, make sure you, like 60% of it should be like post-production. If you already have like gear and things like that, but 60% of it, man. And then the rest, maybe hiring a crew, et cetera, and travel, things like that. So we all know that music and sound will enhance the emotional impact of a story. As much as I enjoy silent films, I also enjoy a film with a really good music selection. Now, music licensing is a bitch, and I'm not gonna front like, oh yeah, let's use this, I don't know, Teddy Pendergrass song. Yeah, if you have $60,000 in permission to, sure. There are a lot of websites out there. Hopefully I can share some with you in the future. But my number one tip, and I actually got this from an editor when I was at the new school. Oh man, I have to look at my notes. Darn. I can't remember her name. She always said that she likes to edit her first rough cut without any music. Just focusing on the sounds of the interview and seeing how it feels. That way you can build your own rhythm, or you can, find your own groove per se with the film itself. Because let's say, you add in that Teddy Pendergrass song and then his estate's like, nah, you can't use it. You know what I mean? Now you're like, crap, I got to figure out another workaround for this. Post-production, obviously we're working towards the final cut and marketing strategies. So in the pre-production stage, when I had said that you should probably start brainstorming sponsors that you can work with, the different companies that you can work with to get funding, I think you should also do the same with film festivals in the pre-production stage, but I think most of it really happens in post. Because sometimes, you can think about the marketing strategy, but it might come to you once you have like a rough cut or a final cut of the film itself. So you can get like a clearer picture, a clear vision of like, okay, where do you see this film? Where is it going to, lay its head at night? That's the kind of thinking that should be going on. But, with the film festivals, look at film festivals that are related to the topic. If you're doing a film on women's health, are you going to submit it to a men's sports film festival? Doesn't really make sense. Or if you're doing a color film, are you going to submit it to a black and white film festival? Doesn't make sense. So let's just keep those things in mind. And then, in post-production too, you can also work on looking for more sponsors as well, because sometimes people are not on board until you have a proof of concept or you have something that's tangible that you can present to someone, and coming up with pitch decks and things like that. So I feel like there's just so much, which is why I love this, because we can talk about it. So I just wanted to do a quick overview of the prod, post stages of filmmaking in documentaries. Filmmaking, especially documentary, is collaborative. It's always going to be collaborative. It's an art, it's a niche. Mistakes are inevitable, but that's where you learn. Let me tell you, I had one mistake of not really understanding my audio equipment, and it took me like a month to convince someone to do an interview. I did the interview, 45 minutes, everything went well, or so I thought. Got the audio back, unusable. It was awful. I wanted to cry. I was like, you know what? And I vowed to never have that happen again. And I made sure to test my audio like 3 or 4 times before actually sitting down and saying, roll camera. Just remember that filmmaking is problem solving, and you're going to enhance those skills too. And I think it's better to be as prepared as possible, but still be flexible, because things happen. So thank you for joining me on this first filmmaking video. I hope to bring you more, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And make sure to hit that subscribe button if you liked anything that I said here today, because this is my jam. And if this is your jam, let's jam together. You feel me? All right. So I will talk to you next time. Take care of yourselves. Love you. Bye.